My father spent years as a prisoner in Germany. He was supposed to hate everything German. Instead, he fell in love with a German woman. The Nazis arrested them both for it. I am what happened after. My name is Henri Moreau. I am 76 years old. I live in Lyon, France, the same city my father was born in, the same city he came back to after the war with a German wife that nobody in his family wanted to meet. My father was Henri Moreau, born 1920 in Lyon, the son of a baker. My mother was Elsa Bauer, born 1924, in a small village in Bavaria, the daughter of a farmer whose land had been worked by the same family for 3 generations. They met in 1941. They were arrested in 1943. Their crime, according to the Nazi government of Germany, was that they had fallen in love. This is their story, and mine. I need to explain what happened to France in 1940, because the story begins there, in the collapse of everything my father had believed his country was capable of defending. France fell to Germany in June of 1940. The defeat came with a speed that stunned the world. 6 weeks from the beginning of the German offensive to the French surrender, one of the most rapid military collapses in modern European history. Nearly 2 million French soldiers were taken, prisoners of war, in those 6 weeks. They were marched into Germany and distributed across the Reich as a labor force, working on farms, in factories, in mines, in the infrastructure of a country that had just defeated theirs. My father Henri was 20 years old when he was captured. He had been in the French army for less than a year. He had not yet fired a shot in combat when the unit he was attached to was surrounded and ordered to lay down its arms. He was sent to a farm in Bavaria as a prisoner of war. The farm belonged to the Bauer family. The Bauer farm was a working cattle farm in the Bavarian countryside, rolling hills, dense forest on 3 sides, a farmhouse that had stood in the same spot for over 100 years. By 1941, most of the young men who had worked the farm were gone, drafted into the German army, sent to fight on fronts that kept expanding in every direction. What remained was Elsa's father, Heinrich Bauer, who was too old to be drafted, and Elsa herself, who was 17 years old when my father arrived in 19, when they were arrested. The arrangement was common throughout Germany. French prisoners of war were assigned to farms and work sites across the Reich, supervised loosely by local authorities, living in outbuildings or spare rooms, working alongside the families whose land they maintained. The rules were clear: no unnecessary contact with the prisoners, no friendship, no fraternization of any kind. When the farm took on a prisoner of war, the farmer signed a document acknowledging these rules. Heinrich Bauer signed that document. Then he put my father to work alongside his daughter every day for 2 years. My father did not speak German when he arrived. My mother did not speak French. They communicated in the beginning through gesture and necessity, the shared language of farm work, of tools and animals, and the rhythms of physical labor that do not require words to coordinate. My father told me once, sitting in our kitchen in Lyon many years after the war, that he had been surprised by Elsa from the very first week. He said, "I expected to be treated like an enemy, like something less than a man. Instead, she treated me like someone who needed to eat and sleep and work, and who happened to speak a different language. She was the first person in Germany who looked at me and saw a person. He learned German slowly from her. She learned French slowly from him. By the end of the first year, they could hold real conversations, halting and imperfect, but real. They talked about Lyon, about Bavaria, about the war that neither of them had chosen, and both of them were trapped inside. They talked about what they wanted when it was over, the ordinary things, the things that feel almost unbearably fragile when the world around you is burning. By the end of the second year, they were in love. They did not plan it. My father told me this clearly. He had not gone to that farm looking for anything except to survive. But survival, in those conditions, required human connection. And human connection between two young people working side by side every day through 2 years of war and fear and isolation had become something neither of them knew how to stop. The Nazi government had been very clear about what this was. The decree of November 25, 1939, had established that any unnecessary contact between German civilians and prisoners of war was illegal. The regime advertised this prohibition on city walls, in newspapers, in public announcements, read outside town halls. The message was explicit. Prisoners of war were the enemy. Contact with the enemy was betrayal, and betrayal would be punished. The punishment was severe. For German women caught in forbidden relationships with prisoners of war, penal servitude, years in prison, public humiliation, their names announced in newspapers, their crimes read out in courtrooms. In some cases, they were paraded through their towns, their heads shaved, signs around their necks identifying what they had done. For the prisoners, military prison, concentration camps in the worst cases. At minimum 3 years of punishment on top of whatever time remained in their captivity. The courts used the Nuremberg race laws to justify these sentences. They spoke of the purity of German blood. They called what my parents had done a threat to the German people. What my parents had done was fall in love on a farm in Bavaria. They were discovered in the spring of 1943. My father never told me exactly how. He said only that someone had reported them, a neighbor, perhaps, or someone who had seen something and decided it was their duty to say something. In Nazi Germany, the machinery of surveillance ran partly on ordinary people reporting ordinary people, and the relationship between a French prisoner of war and a German farmer's daughter was exactly the kind of thing that machinery was designed to catch. They were arrested separately. My father was taken first, military police arriving at the farm one morning before dawn. My mother was taken the following day. They were not permitted to speak to each other. They were tried separately. My father was sentenced to 3 years in a German military prison, Groudens, in what is now Poland, one of the facilities specifically designated for prisoners of war convicted of forbidden relations. He was 23 years old. He had done nothing except love someone the government had decided he was not permitted to love. My mother was sentenced to 1.5 years of penal servitude. She was 19 years old. Her name was published in the local newspaper. Her father, my grandfather Heinrich, who had signed the document saying he understood the rules and had then put his daughter and the French prisoner to work together every day for 2 years, was questioned but not charged. My mother served her sentence in a women's prison in Bavaria. My father served his in Groudens. They did not see each other for 2 years. The war ended in May of 1945. My father was released from Groudens and made his way back to France. A journey that took weeks through a Germany that had been bombed into rubble, on trains that ran when they ran and stopped when they stopped, through checkpoints and temporary camps and the long, slow, administrative chaos of a continent trying to figure out what came next. He arrived in Lyon in the summer of 1945. His family was there, his parents, his sisters. They had survived the occupation and the years of war, and they were relieved to have him back. The son and brother they had been afraid they would not see again. He stayed in Lyon for 3 months. Then he went back to Bavaria. His family thought he had lost his mind. His mother cried. His father told him that the war was over and he did not need to go back to Germany, that whatever had happened, there was over, and he should stay home and rebuild his life among his own people. My father listened to all of it. Then he packed a bag and went back to find Elsa Bauer. He found her on the farm. She had been released from prison in early 1945, in the final chaotic months of the war, and had returned to her father's land because there was nowhere else to go. Her father had died in 1944. A stroke, my mother told me, though she said it with a particular flatness that suggested she had never entirely forgiven him for signing that document. And then watching what happened when my father walked back up the road to the Bauer farm in the autumn of 1945. My mother was in the yard. She saw him coming from a distance. She did not run. My father told me this, that she stood very still and watched him walk toward her. And when he was close enough, she said something in German that he had to ask her to repeat, because he was certain he had not heard it right. She said, "I knew you would come back." They were married in 1946. The ceremony was small. My father's family did not come from France. My mother's surviving relatives attended in silence, which my mother said was better than what she had expected. They moved to France in 1949, when it became clear that starting a life in Germany was going to be harder than starting one elsewhere. They settled in Lyon, in a small apartment near the river, and my father went to work in his own father's bakery, and my mother learned French with the same quiet determination she had brought to everything else in her life. I was born in 1948, before they left Germany. The first year of my life was spent on the Bauer farm, in the same outbuilding where my father had slept as a prisoner of war. Growing up in Lyon as the son of a French father and a German mother in the late 1940s and 1950s was its own particular experience. The war was not old. The occupation was not old. People remembered what Germany had done to France, and my mother's accent was something that could silence a room. She never apologized for it. I want to be clear about that. She was not a woman who apologized for things that were not her fault. She had opposed the regime that had imprisoned her for loving a French man. She had opposed it in the most direct way available to her, by doing the thing it had forbidden and accepting the consequences. She had nothing to apologize for, but she understood the silence. She understood the looks. She absorbed them with the same quiet stubbornness that she had brought to every difficult thing in her life, and she never complained about them, and she never asked France to forgive her for being German. She simply lived there for 50 years. And slowly, in the way that time works on almost everything, the silence became less frequent, and the looks became less sharp, and the woman, who had been a German farmer's daughter, became simply the baker's wife, Henri's wife, Jean's mother, a woman who made excellent bread and had a slight accent and had clearly decided, a long time ago, that this was where she belonged. My father died in 1995. He was 75 years old. He had spent 50 years making bread in Lyon, the same bread his father had made, the bread I grew up eating. He died in the bakery, almost. A heart attack in the early morning, before the shop opened, when he was alone with the dough and the ovens and the particular quiet of the city not yet awake. My mother died in 2002. She was 78. She died in the apartment near the river, the apartment she had moved into in 1949 with 2 suitcases and a French dictionary and a husband whose family had not come to the wedding. In her last years, she talked about Bavaria sometimes, about the farm, about her father, whom she had never entirely forgiven and never entirely stopped missing, about the river that ran through the village where she had grown up, about the particular smell of the Bavarian countryside in summer. She talked about it the way people talk about things they have not allowed themselves to miss for a very long time. I sat with her and listened. I had always known the broad shape of my parents' story: the prisoner of war, the farm, the arrest, the prison, the return. They had not hidden it from me. It was too central to explain why we lived where we lived, and why my mother spoke French with an accent, and why certain relatives on both sides of the family had taken decades to come around. But in those last years, my mother told me things she had not told me before. Small things. The specific morning in spring 1943, when the military police came. The sound of the truck on the farm road. The look on my father's face when they took him. Not afraid, she said, but sorry. Sorry that she was going to pay for something that had been as much his doing as hers. She told me that the worst part of the prison was not the conditions. It was not knowing. Not knowing whether my father was alive. Not knowing whether he would come back. Not knowing whether, when the war ended and they were both free, she would ever see him again. She said, I decided to believe he would come back. Not because I had any reason to believe it, but because the alternative was something I could not afford to think about. He came back. She had been right to believe it. I am 76 years old now. I still live in Lyon. I still eat bread from the bakery my father ran for 50 years. It belongs to someone else now, but the recipe is the same. I have my mother's German dictionary, the one she brought from Bavaria in 1949, and my father's prison number from Groudens, written on a small piece of paper he kept in his wallet for the rest of his life. I do not know why he kept it. I never asked him. I think perhaps it was because he wanted to remember exactly what it had cost, what they had both paid for the thing that the Nazi government had called a crime. People ask me sometimes what I make of my parents' story, whether I think of it as a love story or a war story or something else entirely. I tell them it is all three, and that the three things are not separate from each other, that the love only makes sense inside the war, and the war only reveals what it reveals because of the love. My father was supposed to hate everything German. My mother was supposed to see him as the enemy. The Nazi government called what they had a crime. I am 76 years old. I am what they had, and I have never once believed it was a crime.